I was really down on myself. And he says, Adam, are you going to be better like next week after you got some more interviews under your belt? I'm like, yeah. He says, what about in a month? I said, yeah. He said, what about in a year? I said, yeah. He said, what about in 10 years? He said, yeah. He said, do you have any downloads? Is there one person listening? I said, yeah, I've got a lot of downloads. And he's like, all right, well then present day Adam doesn't have the right to judge the growth of the future Adam. So just be in the present and enjoy the journey.
Welcome to another episode of Personal Brand Blueprint. Today's going to be a very special one today because it is going to be about podcasting. So a little meta today and the business of podcasting. What goes into actually launching a podcast, hosting a podcast, the business and monetization behind it, all fun things. So today we have Adam Torres. Sorry for calling your last name, but Adam, welcome to the show.
I'll go with Torres. Come on, just don't call me late.
Is that
for
a nickname?
Lunch.
I know
late
my
for
last
lunch,
name's...
late for dinner. Don't call me that. You call me anything else.
My last name's Polikoff. Growing up, I'd be called Polly. That's the nickname. But I feel like Torres, that's like a classic. Growing
I'll tell
up,
you
because
Adam. So there's Adam. So think about it. I grew up and I had a bunch of friends named Adam. So they actually called me Cousin Adam because I had a bunch of cousins. So like, oh, that's Cousin Adam, and it stuck. And when I was in college, people would call me Cousin Adam that were not my cousin because it just stuck. So I was Cousin Adam.
There you go.
Everybody's cousin. Come on.
That's got to be interesting when you're floating around, people calling you, a bunch of your friends are calling you cousin. It's like, how many family members?
Let me tell you the other Adams though. There was what was there? There was Crazy Adam. There was White Boy Adam. There was Adam. Like literally, his name was Adam. So we called him Adam because that was the Adam that we just called Adam. Bunch of different Adams.
He was the OG Adam, the original.
Yeah. Oh no, that's Adam, not Cousin Adam.
Love it. Well, let's get into the thick of it here. So, podcasting, that's your universe. Give the people a little bit of background around who you are and kind of what you got going on in the podcasting space.
Well, first, I just want to say what I have going on in podcasting, it was not planned. I wasn't of this bent to where I wanted to be behind a mic. I even knew what a podcast was when I first started. I didn't. The other co-founder of the company, Mission Matters, named Chirag Sagar, he's like, Adam, you got to do a podcast. I'm like, man, I don't want to do a podcast. I don't even know what a podcast is. What are you talking about? He's like, you don't listen to podcasts? I'm like, I don't even know what that is. What are you talking about? And he says, I kind of drew the short straw, or whatever, however you want to say it. And he's like, all right, I'll do the podcast. And so to even say that we started with the idea of launching a podcast, I would say that my first 300 episodes could have been called Adam recorded a phone call on his phone and uploaded it, not edited, no intro, no outro. I didn't even know what that was. In fact, my first show, I was so scared to even do. I didn't even use my real name because I was scared that somebody was going to find out that I was doing a podcast, whatever that was.
So, and what year was this?
We're going on 7 years on that particular story, so it's about 7 years ago. Company's 9 years old, but we were about 2 years in, I believe, off the top of my head, before we started our first podcast. We started in book publishing, so that was the very, very first thing, and it was just a little marketing thing that we were doing on the side as a side hustle. Myself and the other co-founder, we had other businesses, but I share that story about not having it all figured out on podcasting, just because if you're out there and you're watching or listening to this and you're like, you want to start it, but you don't know how or where, self-proclaimed worst podcaster ever, but you can even if you don't have any talent, you can't remember your name, can't do anything, just do it a lot. I'm over 6,000 podcasts in and still going, so you could say that hopefully I got a little better, maybe not, I don't know. That's subjective, but at least I got a catalog, so I'll leave it there.
So damn, 6,000 interviews. These are interview podcasts.
Over 6,000 episodes. Yeah.
Sheesh.
Yeah. Monologues. I've only done actually one monologue, and unfortunately, the reason for that was last October, my mother passed, and it was kind of crazy. It was in Florida, and it was a tornado of all things. So when you think about 6 people passed from these freak tornadoes that happened before the hurricane, one of them was my mother. And it was crazy. Just target right on, I mean, just God, act of God. It targeted right on that house. The neighbors were fine. There was actually someone in a car in the carport next to the home when it went away, and literally threw across the whole complex or whatever. And when I went down there to go, check out the wreckage, do all the things you do in that scenario, all these miracles just started happening. They were coming like fast and hard. I mean, like, act of God, insane miracles. I did, and by the time, so there's like this 2 to 3 day period, I started seeing them right when I got off the plane. These crazy, insane miracles. And so I started just writing notes like of things, and that I felt like, my mom's talking to me, and I'm getting these miracles and whatever. And by the time I was done with it, I had like this list of, I don't know, like 15, like insane, unbelievable things you would never believe in your life that would happen. Like, it's insane. They're legit miracles, like 15 of them. And I was on my way, I was about to go to the airport, and I was like, you know what? And I was looking at it, and I was in the car, and I just did what we do as content creators. I just put on a camera. I tried to not cry too much, and I left my sunglasses on, and I just started talking, going through the list, explaining the story. And when I stopped recording, it was like an hour and a half. And this was no like backstory, nothing. This was just documenting the miracles that were taking place. So I've done one monologue, the rest all interviews.
Wow, that's a beautiful story in itself, right there.
It's insane, man. I was like, when's the next monologue I'm doing? I don't know, man. I don't want. Took a lot out of me.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I mean, let's compare that though, because when you were getting into podcasting, I know an easy way to get into podcasting is kind of this interview style where like the spotlight really isn't on the host as much. It's kind of like on the guest to come up and perform. So when you were getting into podcasting, what was kind of the strategy? Why did you get into it? And what was like your first couple, we'll say months, maybe even years in trying to figure that out?
Yeah. Well, that statement that you just made, I want to pick that apart just for a second, because that was also my initial understanding. And it depends, and I would say it depends on what you want out of this business. So just slight diversion, then I'll circle back and answer your question. So when I started, and it is answer your question actually, I was just kind of like thinking I'm creating content, but when I went full time, so I was in finance almost 14 years. I managed a little under $200 million, and when I decided to finally exit that and like say I'm going to do this full time and be like, I took the same approach that I took when I was building my financial practice and my career there. So think about it, I had Series 7, 6, 63, CFP, like you name it, insurance, every license you could think of. Did that business for a long time. Started when I was 16 at Raymond James and Associates, and I thought I was going to be a lifer in that business. By the way, I loved it. Everything was wonderful, so there was no reason to not do it. But this kind of started to, as it started to grow, as it started to build, I was like, But so then what I did was I took the same intensity that I took when I was getting my licenses. So you could call it, I read maybe 8,000 to 10,000 pages in getting all those licenses. And I'm the type that, likes to read, and that's how I particularly learn. I read, I study. And so I did the same thing for this business. I went back to the beginning of entertainment, at least modern day, like things like from vaudeville all the way to present day. And I read the biographies, anything I could get my hands on, from like a Howard Stern, a Johnny Carson, a Bob Hope. You go far enough back, Red Skelton, all of these people, I studied all of them. All the hosts of the past, and I accumulated it, and probably at this point I'm like 7,000 plus pages in that understanding of the entertainment business. And one theme that I find behind a lot of the people that were hosts is it all comes down to the host, and it's whoever's behind the mic, period. And so the guest, I'll give you an early Johnny Carson, and this would be him talking to someone else on the show, but he's saying, in the beginning and making a joke that in the early days, if you had a pulse, you were going to be on the show. If you any book, you got a new recipe, you're on the show. So the host, I just would slightly change and say it depends what you want. If you want to be a professional, and if you're going to take this as the entertainment business, it's always the host. I don't don't lean on the guest. It's up to me if the guest maybe is perceived not to be the most interesting, or maybe not doesn't have a certain story. At this point, I can walk in front of a CVS and I'm gonna pull something out of somebody. I don't care. I'm gonna get some entertainment factor out of them. I'm gonna get something out of them that's gonna be usable. So slight caveat, that's only for hosts, because I want them to. I kind of juxtapose between the novice and the professional and when I give answers, so I wanted to just set the table slightly with that one. Sure. So in the beginning, but to answer your question directly, in the beginning, you had a pulse, man. I was just interviewing. It's practice. The way I look at this, I look at it differently than anyone else. I shouldn't say that. I look at it, I don't give myself more credit than I deserve. So what that means is it's a sport for me. It's a sport. If you think of it as a sport, you're always going to get another shot. You're always going to get another layup. You're always going to get another. I do bad interviews daily. I'm doing I do 10 plus interviews a day. So to think that I'm going to make every single shot if I'm doing 10 interviews a day, probably not. Like, I'm going to be like, I'll mess up something out of this, that. But the cool part about specifically the podcast medium is that it's forgiving, just like sports. You don't expect Michael Jordan to hit every game-winning shot. If Michael Jordan hit every single game-winning shot of think about it. He hits every game-winning shot of every point, and he wins every game at any close situation at the end. There's no point in watching. You already know what's going to happen if he's guaranteed to hit every single winning shot. And I'm not a hater of Michael Jordan. I mean, I love Michael Jordan, whatever. But not that he's watching this or cares, but I do. He's awesome. Right. And I liked it even more. No, I liked it even more when we were beating him up when we were the Pistons way back when I was a little kid before. Pistons, I'm just playing. No, but the point is if we knew what the outcome was going to be, it's the same thing. It ruins the allure. If you knew every single time he was going to make the one shot, whatever. So some of my mess ups, I feel, are some of the best episodes, and that's the one, and they get the most traction.
So 6,000 interviews. Give us an understanding of like what is this content for? Like, why 6,000? What are you? I mean, you could be out there still in the business that you were in for multiple years. You got into content creation. You took on the role and responsibility of being an entertainer and interviewing these 6,000 guests. Mm-hmm. What is kind of the business and mission behind that?
So initially, it was just create the initial platform was called Money Matters, and the book that I initially came out with was called Money Matters as well. And we thought, myself and the other co-founder, we thought that it was going to be this kind of like financial advisory, teach people money and things like that, like what I knew. As I started doing more and more interviews, we realized that a lot of the content wasn't really all focused on money. And one day I was, a lot of things that I think happen at this company are really God-driven, they're divine. Like some things I don't have all this figured out. Like literally I was interviewing somebody and they're like, Adam, mission matters, or money matters, but mission matters too. And I swear it was like God hit me in the stomach and it was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, oh. And I couldn't get it off my mind. And I called the other co-founder. I'm like, hey, Chirag, what do you think about Mission Matters is the name for the company. He's like, we have a little discussion, whatever, we move on. A couple weeks later, our Chirag calls me back and he's like, hey, Adam, what do you think about the name Mission Matters? And I'm like, that's a great idea, Chirag. Like, I forgot we even had the initial conversation. And I'm like, I just took it as like God put that in his head, and he's like, so he's calling me, and I'm like, okay, well, here's the deal. If we have enough money in the bank account, I don't care. If we have down to the penny enough money, and we look up that domain, we already know it's taken. We're gonna buy it though, and because we can't do this if we don't have the missionmatters.com domain, period. It can't have anything else before it or after. It has to be that, because that's a big name. That's like Forbes, like period. It's like Mission Matters is huge. That's going to outlive me for sure and outlast me. It's beyond me, and this was never about like me. It was about building something bigger. So we buy it. We buy the domain. Again, the most I'd ever thought I'd ever spend on a domain in my freaking life. And
do you mind? Is there a ballpark you can?
I'm not going to share it, but it's more than I ever thought I would.
There was an ouch when you
Yeah.
press
Oh no.
play.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
then we push and we relaunched the entire company in within 9 days. And what's crazy about that though is just for perspective. I already had over 1,500 interviews. We already had like 10 books published under that name. We already had a brand built. We had all the social media built. We had traction. We had a business. It was working. And we paused. We lost. So we lost all the subscribers. We lost everything, and we started over from scratch. New website, new everything. And then we essentially looked at all of the content, and then we segmented it, and we created different shows based off of the niches. So I technically host 8 different shows. So I have a money show, a business show, an entertainment show, a luxury and lifestyle show, a tech and innovation show, a startup garage show, a fitness show. So what happens is all of these shows, different audiences can come to these shows for whatever content they like. And if they like that and they discover another one, oh, there's a fitness show. Oh, wait a minute, they do this too? That's great. So then that's how it started to build. And the quantity, that wasn't planned. The demand just grew. We had over 30,000 people apply to be on the show last year. So the demand just grew, and I didn't like telling people no. And we essentially designed the company so that people understand, like, this is not what you're supposed to do. I'm not proposing anybody else does this. But if you're going to do this or follow a similar model, you have to design the company and the infrastructure to where you're going to be able to be in front of camera that long. So I looked at what Oprah did, and with her company and her production company, and basically what she did is she has, these executives that run all these different divisions. She meets with them maybe once a week or whatever that is. Again, this is old information, so I could be wrong at this point. If somebody wants to call me on it, they're welcome to. But when I was researching it, maybe she had like 5 meetings a week or something like that, period. So like 5 hours of her time was on that, and the rest was, on production or on the creative side of things. Now, I'm not there yet. One day, hopefully, but I spend about 70% of my time in front of camera, 30% of my time running the company as CEO. And as we have grown, there's a little over 35 of us here, so we're not like iHeartRadio, 4,000 plus employees. But I like to say we give people a run for their money with our little humble squad. We
Sure,
do
small but
it. We're
mighty.
putting out we're putting out episodes that we compete. And on another note, we are doing, like, I'm present at, and I'm with the big boys at the largest conferences covering the same conferences in the world, like the Milken Global Conference in Beverly Hills. It's Bloomberg, CNBC, Yahoo Finance, and little baby Mission Matters. Hey.
No. I mean, it's crazy how, there's teams now. Like the Diary of a CEO, like some of
Oh
these
yeah.
podcasts they're media
They're
networks in
huge.
themselves. Yeah.
They are, and they're killing certain media networks. I'm not going to name no names, but some of them are. Like, if you look at
Right.
their reach on one episode versus if you were to break down and compare apples to apples and say how many people saw this interview versus this interview, not obviously the whole network and the reach that's different. It's 24-hour channels, right? But if you look at interviews, you could make the argument, and you look at, not to get into politics, but you look at the last election, and you look at like using influencers or using podcasts or not. What's reaching and actually influencing people?
I think it was 2 nights ago was Taylor Swift was on the New Heights podcast, and that
Yeah.
got 15 million views in the last 48 hours, and there was a record 1.5 million concurrent streams on the live on YouTube watching that. So, like,
Wow.
what else gets
What was
that?
the amount of streams? I didn't know that. I didn't know the stream part.
1.5 million.
Could
That
you
was like live
imagine?
concurrent, everyone watching at the same time.
Could
1.5 million
you
people.
imagine?
Yeah.
You'd flip. I'd flip. I'd be like, what is, I don't even, is that real? Like, are you allowed to
Yeah.
have that many commas?
Yeah. So I want to talk about. All right, so you're in that kind of the business of podcasting. You have the podcasting network, multiple niches for shows. What is kind of like the mission matters? What is kind of then the mission behind the network, and what is also kind of the business behind that mission?
So the way that I look at this is profit centers. So we're the model on the back end. Think of it as we're the most small, little like baby of a Berkshire Hathaway kind of model of like an ant, a speck, a molecule of Warren Buffett, right? And so what he did essentially was he has a model where he acquires companies. The CEOs, he doesn't get in there tinkering. He builds and he buys great companies and lets them keep doing what they were doing and execute, and then they benefit from a lot of the financial advantages or things that he brings to the table as well. So for us, the concept on the back end is pretty simple. We grow these profit centers, and what we've been able to attract great entrepreneurs who are already wonderful at what they were doing, and give them opportunity through the standpoint of being under our umbrella. And also, so we're not acquiring like a Warren Buffett, but we're growing based on what our company wants. Or what our clientele and what our audience wants. So for example, I'll give you like 2-3 quick examples. Our book division, that grew because in the beginning, I published my first book, and it just did. I don't know how to explain it, but people now looked at me as a publisher and this and that, and I was still a financial advisor at this time, and I'm like, I'm not helping you publish a book. I don't even know how to publish a book. Did you see my book? The graphic design's terrible. I was a cheapo on it. Come on, I wasn't gonna put any money into this thing. I didn't even want to do a book, but my mentor said I had to, so I did it. I checked a box, but people were like, hey, I'm still in. Do you want to help me publish a book? So I went and I thought about, if I was to publish books, how would it make sense? And I came up with the Chicken Soup for the Soul model, and then we launched an anthology series, and it was under the Money Matters brand at first, then Mission Matters when we turned to that, but now we've published over 400 authors, and one of our most notable celebrity authors would be, we published Barry Sanders, his autobiography, Bye Bye Barry. So if you remember that documentary came out, all of that was based on our book. Considering I'm from Detroit, I'm just going to say that was a dream, publishing Barry Sanders. I grew up in that era, so that was amazing. But so that's how our book publishing division came about. Our podcast division, during COVID, I wasn't traveling doing these live interviews, and people were asking us to create podcasts. Now, fast forward, we've launched over 250 shows for people. So now we figured out how to launch shows as we were doing that, and then we launched our podcast network, and those are shows that we own and that we distribute and that we produce as well. So that grew from that. Then we have a full PR division, and each one of these have executives that run their own profit center and are in charge of their own P&L. So, and that allows me to create content, drive traffic, and then as our audience, as our clients, as our things want, they want to be involved with the community. We do over 50 events a year. So ourselves, outside of the conferences I cover. So a lot of them are based in California, in LA, some NorCal, and some of them Miami, some of them, but all over the place. And we partner with other organizations to host events too. So we do over 50 events. So it's really become an ecosystem, and I like to think a trusted source of information and entertainment for business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives, and for services, really. What's happened is, somebody publishes a book with us, and then they're like, oh, wait, you guys do podcasts too? Yeah, then they launch a podcast with them. Like, well, wait a minute, I need ongoing. So then they do PR with us and marketing, and then maybe they want us to do their social media too. We have a full social media agency. So on the back end, all of these things, they kind of grew organically out of just listening to need. We had capability, we had bench space, we attracted the right talent, and brick by brick, we're not in a rush. Ultimately, we still are a media brand, but just like Forbes has Forbes the media brand, and that drives the traffic. But on the back end, they have, for example, Forbes agency councils and things like that on the back end. And that's Forbes. That's free advertising for you. That's cool.
There you go. So the publishing network is almost kind of then to how what was it, like Johnson & Johnson started the soap operas in the day. Is you kind of have that as a distribution network, but really the kind of the bottom of the iceberg is really like the services that kind of go behind those that would want to be on those interviews in the publishing network, and what you can provide, services you can provide them.
Yeah. And then I guess, and it's interesting too, because it kind of, as we continue to grow as a media brand, like we're into, I mean, when these come out, you'll see like we're in production and some bigger scale productions now, like Africa Forward. So that's where I'll be going to Africa and I'll be doing these interviews for these like insane things that are going to happen. I'll be literally interviewing African presidents within the next year. Like it's, so this is going to continue to grow. And then similar things that we're pitching in Saudi Arabia. So then when we talk about shows, to me, it's all about like progressively getting better, like progressively inching the content up and becoming better and better over time, because I don't feel I was born with any particular talent. Like, again, I couldn't, like, it started very progressively. The beginning, it was audio only. Then it got a little better. Then it got a little better. Then it got a little better. I didn't do a video interview until after like 1,500 interviews before I turned on a camera, because I couldn't even remember my name. When you turn on a camera, I'd be like, it was over. So I couldn't even remember my name. So so then after 1,500 interviews, then after that I started doing my first in-person. Probably after 3,000 interviews, I started doing in-person interviews. And then after maybe like 4,000 interviews, I started doing interviews on stage in front of live audiences of hundreds of people. And now we're at the point to where we're getting to like production, everything else capability, where we're going to be launching shows on like streaming services like Prime and other things like that, where it'll continue to inch the production value up, and then also producing like some really, really like high-end documentaries for clients as a production company, by the way. So our name as executive producer and production and all of that should continue to grow in terms of scope and type of project, and all of these really just kind of feed into that same ecosystem of people that we want to be around. Like, I like to think of the Mission Matters community and the people like our clients, the people that come to the show, like these are people that I'd be okay with being around my family, that I'd want to have, you know, a cup of coffee or tea with, or a beer, or, you know, like that's what I'm kind of looking at, is also just the community component. And that's what I'm not going to claim I'm the secret sauce in any way. It's the accumulation, and it's the definitely it's the all of these other components and parts that come together that really don't have to. Like our authors, we've published some insane people. They don't have to be in books. They don't care. Like, I don't mean they don't care, but they don't have to. They're not doing that because they need attention or but they do it because they want to support what we're doing. They want to support the mission. They see there's a lot of good that can be done. And then when I think about, for example, our work in Africa or Saudi Arabia, like, I was working on setting up an interview, and I just interviewed a gentleman. He's the head of the SEC in Kenya, and he was talking about how they just did their like SEC Securities Act out there, and they have all these new regulations and laws that are going to like, one, for example, if you're caught with doing a Ponzi scheme or something like that, mandatory 10 years of prison time. So why is that important? Why? Because they're going to be attracting more outside investment into that region, into those markets, because of those stricter laws. And so they come to me and to a media outlet like ours to get that information out to our audience. Another quick example would be World Bank. I think it's called World Bank 300 off the top of my head. I interviewed a head of a power company, and he's talking to me about like a World Bank initiative where they want to bring something like 300 million or something like that people electricity. And this is going to completely, I mean, what's going to happen and how this is happening, by the way, is they finally have the cost. It's always been cost prohibitive. They finally have the cost down to up to $1 per month to have electricity. So now finally cost for many people in Africa is not going to be an issue. So think about this for a moment. In the United States, when we had electricity, what happens? You don't have to rush home so quick from the fields, because you're still a farmer, to eat. You're not by candlelight. Now the kids can now, and other people can read later. You can now cook later. You can now be in the field 1 or 2 hours later. You can now wake up earlier. So now education is going to revolutionize things in like a generation. It'll have an immediate impact, but it's going to revolutionize that entire region within a generation. You combine that with the Chinese and Saudi investments in those regions, and now accessibility and the brain power of all those. It's unlocking human capital and human potential to the tunes of hundreds of millions of people quickly. And if you think about what that did to the United States, having electricity for them, now with the infrastructure, and they're also skipping some of the things that we had to do. So they're going mobile first. So they don't have to lay all that infrastructure. They're directly to mobile through satellite. Their price point is way lower. So technology wise, they're going to be able to progress so much faster and really at some point catch up from the standpoint of how fast they're going to be able to progress in terms of education and otherwise. It's going to be very interesting. And that's just, and the layers and what that looks like in the global economy changes an entire region. It becomes a model for other areas too. So it's about lifting humanity. So those stories that I just told you, that's when I think about Mission Matters as a whole, not to sound, it's not me, it's everybody. It's the person on the other side of the interview, it's the other shows, it's all of that. It's like, how do we do something to lift humanity? Like, that's what's interesting to me.
Sure. And so you help people launch podcasts, nations launch podcasts, and you have your own podcast network. What have you seen to be the reasons that a podcast will be successful, whether that be from just the overall niche or focus of what it is, but also kind of like, especially in guest interview podcast style, like how do those work? Or, taking notes on my end, because this is what I do. What are ways to kind of ensure, as well, at least as best you can, ensure quality podcasts?
Well, on my end, first thing, I'll circle back to what I said earlier. You got to decide if you're trying to take this as a business or as a hobby. If it's a hobby, then just have fun. If it's a business, you have to make sure that whatever you're doing is sustainable. So meaning, I don't mean as a host. I don't mean demand of people that want to come to the show. I mean, you got to make sure your cash flow and your finances on the back end, that you have profit centers that allow you to do it forever. That's the number one thing. And so when we were doing this in the beginning, I kept expenses so low. I had it down literally to, I think it was like 35 cents per piece of content we were putting out. That's why I wouldn't edit in the beginning for hundreds of interviews, because the profit centers weren't in place to be able to pay for that and to make sure I could stay in the game. But if you can make sure that you can stay in the game literally forever, then you won right there. If you're starting that way, then you won, because all the rest is going to be a process. And when you think about a professional, like a professional entertainer, like the Johnny Carsons, the Bob Hopes, the guys were doing it for 30, 40 years. So when nowadays we think about it like, and we're like, oh, I've been doing this for, 3 years and nothing's happened. Dude, what are you talking about? Like, Johnny Carson's been there for 30 years. What are you talking about? And before that, 20 years doing, learning the craft or whatever it was, 10 years, 15, whatever it was before that, learning the craft. So, how can you expect to, have, people just don't have a proper expectation of apprenticeship and learning. And so if you take it from that standpoint, and I'll give you some other numbers that make this really interesting, but if you take it from that standpoint, all the pressure's off. And then if you start studying, you start finding clues. Like Howard Stern, I'm going to paraphrase him, but he said that his time, because he didn't use this exact words, but I'll use the word blessing. But essentially what it came down to was it was a blessing when he was working in those smaller markets for all those years, because he was at that time in this self-imposed training period that was making him worth somebody that was worth listening to. So by the time he got to the bigger markets, he was ready. So if you start thinking about that, he wasn't looking at it like, I'm going to grow this little thing. He's like, this is my career. This is what I do. So if this is what you do, here's the interesting part. So again, if you're the hobbyist, my advice to you, the hobbyist, is that just have fun. Have fun. The moment you stop having fun, you're going to quit. So just make sure you're having fun. And if whatever you don't like doing, if you can afford it, pay somebody else to do it. But just make sure it's sustainable. Be tight with your money. And if it's not sustainable financially, you already know. But just be in it for the long haul if possible. But just have fun. That's it. If you're the professional, getting back to that side of things, and that's really one of your aspirations, to do this full time and to make a living and provide for your family and to provide opportunities for others and their families, then again, first thing is profit centers. Make sure it's sustainable, and then as that becomes better, start focusing on yourself as a host. But in reality, specifically for podcasts, why I think you just can't lose in this business if you stay in it, I'll give you some context. 150 million plus YouTube channels, 4 million podcasts. And I believe we're in month 6 of YouTube right now. One of the reasons why there's so few podcasts is not because there's not demand, it's not because there's not advertisers, it's not because there's not sponsors, it's because they grew out of radio. And in radio, you had host-read ads. Host-read ads mean you have to have a big show and a sponsor that wants to pay the host to read that ad. Well, who's going to pay somebody with 10 downloads? Nobody. So guess what? You're not going to get it. But recently, and let's just say within the last, I could be off 5 years or whatever it is, ad attribution exists in podcasting. You can now sell inventory, and you can put an ad on an episode and take it off automatically. It's automated and the pennies start rolling in, just like in YouTube the early days where small creators were rewarded. Now you combine that with more people coming online on their mobiles in places like Africa, all around the world, whatever. And now you think about dumb phones. So, the 2G, 3G, you think about audio only. I know there's video podcasts, but that's not what I'm talking about because, again, I'm not competing with YouTube, period. It's not for my content. it's going to get better, but it's not YouTube style. It's for podcasts, for my particular content, the way I do it. That being said, and we have a YouTube channel, by the way, so I'm not against YouTube, but I like to focus on the numbers and why podcasting is such a big, in my opinion, a big windfall long term. So now what's going to happen is there's going to be 4 million podcasts, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million. There'll be 100 million podcasts one day. And the people that stick with it, here's the funny part, or the most interesting part ever. If you look at history of entertainment, minus a Bob Hope who basically died on stage because he did it till he was so, old and he couldn't read the cue cards anymore. Minus a Bob Hope, if you look at the other people, networks and the other people in charge retired them when they were at the height of their power, typically. Or like a Johnny Carson, he left when he was on top because the dude had class. He's like, I'm good. I'm not going to decline. I'm going to leave while I'm on top, and I already did it better than anybody's ever done it prior to that point. So he just left on top. But look at it now is that you don't have to retire out of this. And if you think about the real output of a normal show, I'm not talking about my show, I'm not talking about what I do, I don't propose that or think that makes sense for somebody, but let's just say a normal show, episode a week. So you're talking 50, 52, let's say you do some specials in between, let's say 60 episodes a year. So in a normal show. If you think about that, year over year, that catalog compounds. I think that, God willing, I live to be this old and that I don't, I'm not lucid. I don't have any random things. A tornado doesn't come and get me. Sorry, Mom. I don't mean to say it. That's one of my jokes, but but we used to laugh about death, so she's okay. She's laughing with me, I'm sure. So that's it. Latino has a little bit different humor on that stuff. But assuming a tornado doesn't come and get me, it's very likely I'll be a centenarian podcaster. Because if you think about it, when you get to that stage in your life, if you're older, most people around you, a lot of them passed, and you're a little bored, and you're a little bit like, people want to talk to people at that age, right? So think about it. You're at the height of your power. You have the biggest catalog. Everybody wants to talk to you because at that point your show is huge. Do what you want, and you own it. You own it. Like Personal Brand Blueprint, you own it.
That's going to be an interesting time where...
Never happened in the history of the world, what I'm talking about right now.
Podcasting studios and
Well, you're going to think about it for yourself, and you don't have to answer this. I'm not that type of guest but think about it. Why would you, and this could be rhetorical or not, whatever, why would you want to stop recording if you're making money week over week? More interesting interviews are coming in. We're doing this right now virtually, so you could be at home, you could be anywhere, you could be on the golf course. It's going to take you at that point your freaking 70 years of experience, so it takes you zero mental thought, and it's fun. When are you ever not going to want to have one conversation a week with somebody? When? That's interesting because think about it. You'll be at the height of your power. You're going to get the most interesting people in the world, and so most people are stuck at retirement or at that age talking to people that are doing the same thing they've done, that are boring, that are whatever, like, or who knows, right? Or they're, unfortunately, a lot of them are, dying all around them. You don't want to talk to some new entrepreneur, some new whatever your show's about at that age and see what's keep going on in the world? Probably you're going to want to. So I predict there will be many centenarian podcasters, and people will be they're not going to retire out. Why would you retire out? There's no point.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, I'm interested to see.
I know it's a long whatever, but
yeah, but
I'm
it's just
a
an interesting
podcast
thought
futurist.
About,
is that a word? Podcast futurist?
Yeah, yeah. It is now.
Did we just make
You're here
that? I
first.
never heard it before. You know how the
There it
cool
is.
people that are in
Future
tech are
proofing.
like they're futurists and they're this and that? I'm a podcast futurist.
Podcast futurist. You're planning for 30, 50 years from now.
70 years.
Yeah. Love it. Well, Adam, this is awesome. If people want to learn a bit more about you and your podcast network and everything else that you talked about today, where should they check you out?
It's easy. Instagram, Ask Adam Torres. If you're working on a show, if you have a show, if you're working on a book, you have a book, love to hear from you. Love to always see new ideas and new things and see what everybody's up to. So just shoot me a DM, Ask Adam Torres on Instagram. I check my own personal Instagram, so love to connect.
Cool. And if there was one thing you wanted to say to our listener today, just about podcasting to kind of get them in the right mindset, what would you tell them?
When I was early on in my career, I was talking to this old school, old dog writer. He wrote for like LAPD Blue. I say that with affection, by the way. He's old school writer. And I'm in my head and I'm over here like, what's going on, Adam? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not doing good enough. I don't know. Like, am I asking the right questions? Is this entertaining? Are people watching? I was really down on myself. And he says, Adam, are you going to be better, like, next week after you got some more interviews under your belt? I'm like, yeah. He says, what about in a month? I said, yeah. He said, what about in a year? I said, yeah. He said, what about in 10 years? He said, yeah. He said, do you have any downloads? Is there one person listening? I said, yeah, we got a lot of downloads. And he's like, all right, well then present day Adam doesn't have the right to judge the growth of the future Adam. So just be in the present and enjoy the journey.
Love it. Adam, thank you so much for being on today's episode.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Love it. All right. See you on the next episode of Personal Brand Blueprint.